folks on the Wabash Cannonball? Anybody ever heard this?
Hey. Huh?
Hey, John.
Ready for the tour?
Yeah.
How you doing there?
Tourists go to ride
On
the
the tour
bars
here?
and the empty cars.
This is the adult tour.
The Wabash Cannonball was about Hobo.
Hi, Kelly. How you doing?
And we have a
Hey,
Hobo
he's trying to
that lives in this house. And he's about down where the kids are.
stop.
In terms of
Jesus.
level. They look around, they may find it.
He's trying to give his little tour.
You want to look for a hobo? You might know, you might have heard about hobos because there's one in the
Smells weird in here.
movie Polar Express.
Oh,
And most of the kids have seen
Paint.
that. You find him, you find the hobo. What is hobo stand for? I don't know.
Hi, Quinn. How you doing, buddy?
But it means transient, bum, poor person, homeless person.
He's sleeping right there?
Well, he found them.
Oh,
There he is.
people did that?
Yes.
Oh, that is so dangerous.
Yes.
I thought they went in there.
If they could, they would. Yeah.
the train of thought.
Remember the chorus
Came
line?
around there.
The bars and the empty.
Found a hobo under there.
They always preferred the empty cars. The hobos weren't poor, but they weren't stupid. And this is dangerous. They knew it was dangerous. But probably not as dangerous as you now think, because today it's hard to get out of your head 100-car Union Pacific freight trains roaring through Sassoon at 60 miles an hour. Yeah, in the 20s, a car like this probably never got more than about 25 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, and they never went very far before they stopped. So you could, when they stopped, you could get off. But as I say, they would rather be in the empty cars. If there were any, they'd certainly go there first. But if you're a hobo, sometimes you just had to get out of town. And you didn't have a ticket, so this is the way they did it. These are truss rods because this car is entirely wooden. All the support underneath is big wooden beams. And the truss rods allow you to adjust them to keep the floor flat if the car has a heavy load in it. This was built in 1910. We're going to look at a couple of other boxcars that were built in 1920. By that
Does he have to go to the
time,
bathroom?
they had steel underframes. And so they didn't have this anymore. But in the 30s, which is where you think of hobos, you know, the Depression, there were many cars that were this old still running, and so that's what the hobos would look for.
This one, they're inside the building.
No, we're not going to go into Have any of you seen, the adults probably here, seen the movie, the cult movie called Harold and Maude?
Yeah.
You know the movie? You know it? It was filmed in this car. This is Ruth Gordon's home in the movie. And we leased this car to Paramount Pictures. They filmed it in about 1972, and they took the car down to South City. And that's where the filming was done. One of the things that you might want to think about, all the famous movie studios that you know, Universal, Disney, MGM, Warner Brothers, Paramount, all of them used to have backlots and prop departments. None of them do now. They've all been taken over by big conglomerate entertainment corporations. They're run by bean counters, and the backlot and the prop department are not profit centers, and they're gone. So if a film company wants to have a vintage train in their movie, they have to come to a museum like this. We do a little of it. In the 10 years I've been volunteering here, we've just shot 4 commercials. And it's really interesting how many people it takes to get 30 seconds of usable film and how long it takes them, but they come in here and do what they need to do. In California, the big movie site is Railtown 1897 in Jamestown, up in the foothills and the Gold Country. And they've shot more than 100 feature films up there, lots of television shows, and many commercials.
I think the train leaves at 2, Dad, so I don't know.
Want another train?
No, the train that we went on, there's another tour. It's like a trip.
And we talked to the driver there.
What do you say?
Nobody on it.
This is a wooden
Nobody on it.
It's like, no, you said it's two.
We have another one in the other car barn, you might want to compare them, because that's the before and this is the after. This was owned by the State Museum, in Old Sacramento, California State Museum. They lost their parking lot. The developer took it over, they're gonna put a sports stadium there, and, so they had all these cars parked outside, which isn't good. And then suddenly they had to get rid of them. They had to move them because they didn't have any place to store them. So the State of California Railroad Museum became like your local animal shelter. If you could give this puppy a good home, you can have it. So we ended up with this black car and a box car because they fit. This is from the line that you were just on. If you were on the red car, this is the Sacramento Northern predecessor. So we are very interested in anything that's Sacramento Northern. And this car comes from that, so it fits our collection and we can protect it.
$2 million. What? Oh, $2 million. I wish I could just walk out on our own there.
They don't know what's going on. They charge you. What are you going to do?
This is a baggage car. And I filed this under the heading, it seemed like a good idea at the time. The Western Pacific, when it went out of the passenger business, gave away some of its equipment to the cities that it served. This car and coach and a business car and a locomotive were given to the city of Oakland and placed in Harrison Railroad Park for about 30 years. It turns out that most cities do not have the resources or the will to protect a gift like that. And this car was heavily vandalized. Homeless people lived in it, they built fires in it, they graffitied it. So eventually Oakland decided that they just weren't the right place for it, and we got this car from the city of Oakland. And we also got a coach, which is in a different car barn. This has been restored. The coach is still in the condition we got it, and someday we'll get it.
John, this is I'm boarding that train. Do you guys want to go on the train?
I just want to stick with you guys.
Sounds like a good tour. It's moving right along, you know.
But you have to go on the train or you don't. The other one isn't.
I don't see the locomotive here. I don't care about the steam locomotive.
Like RF&P.
I don't know when the next one is going to be.
Know about, maybe near where you live or where you used to live, your grandpa lived. So there's a lot of smaller artifacts around this place. This is a steam locomotive from the Western Pacific. And I usually start by saying, why do you suppose an electric railroad museum has a steam locomotive on display? Any guesses? Well, one of the ones I get is because they're cool. Sometimes because somebody gave it to you. But if you think about it, this locomotive, the tender, the baggage car, and the two Pullmans, this represents the competition. The electric railroads were constructed to try to take business away from this sort of transportation. Steam locomotives are very expensive to run, and the electric railroads were invented, and they went to try to take away short to medium daytime passenger travel. And they were actually quite successful. This train was inaugurated in 1910, and it went to Salt Lake City and then connected to Denver and Chicago. But it was slow. It went down through Niles Canyon and Altamont Pass and Stockton. It was expensive. It was infrequent and therefore inconvenient, and the schedules it did have were set up for people going to Denver and Chicago. And it was smoky and dirty. Or, starting in 1913, on the line you just got off of, you could go from the Bay Area to Sacramento in the fast, clean, frequent, high-speed electric train. And they went 16 times a day through here in 1913. Similar to what they're doing now with the Capital Corridor. I call it the Southwest Airlines business plan. It's a fleet. It goes periodically, every 2 hours or something like that. You never have to worry about it. You just go down and get on the next train. It's almost like a subway. And it was quite successful. I'm sorry, what about this train? Well, beds, this train would have pulled Pullman cars like the ones that are lined up behind it. So there would be some beds. And if there were lots of people going overnight to Salt Lake City, there would be 2 or 3 cars. There could be 50 or 60 beds. This car that we have only has 16 beds. Anyway, the one thing that the entrepreneurs who set up these electric railroads didn't take into consideration or ignored was the rapid development of the internal combustion engine. So they were able to take business away from the steam railroads, but they didn't quite understand what was going to happen with automobiles. In 1913, when this line opened, there were less than 1 million automobiles in America, and they were all luxury automobiles. Hand-built, extremely expensive, often with a chauffeur or a mechanic. And there were no paved roads. So nobody looked at the automobile in 1913 as a reliable means of transportation. Most of you were in horses or carriages. But by 1927, there were 28 million automobiles. So in a 14-year period, we went from less than 1 million to 28 million. Half of them were Model T Fords. Henry Ford's first assembly line opened in 1913, the same year that this railroad line was put in. And Henry Ford got the Model T down to $299. A working man made $5 a day.
This book has 91 pages.
It does, and lots of pictures too. And if the kids will stay with me till we get back to the other end. I got more magazines on. And adults can have one too if you want to. So a working man making $5 a day could earn the price of a brand new car in less than 12 weeks. Now that's something you cannot do today. Also, the speed limit on that train you were just on through here was 65 miles an hour. The fastest trip time from downtown San Francisco to downtown Sacramento was 2 hours and 46 minutes. And today, if you have even a hiccup on I-80, you can't do this in 2 hours and 46 minutes. Last night, I was here at a banquet in